A lot of things will be said about this movie and this review. Here's one thing I will say though. It will ride eternal. Shiny and chrome. Let's talk about it. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, was directed by George Miller and stars Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, before we see her in Fury Road, played by Charlize Theron. And this is taking place in the time before that, spanning across years, as you see her as she's taken from the Green Place and eventually begins to live a life within the Wasteland, which is full of peril and danger, but also meeting some really interesting characters along the way, like Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, and of course Immortan Joe, chronicling all the things that happened to her in the lead up to Fury Road and why she took certain decisions. And it's a movie that I've been excited for a very long time. Mad Max Fury Road is maybe my favorite action movie of the last decade. I think it's an absolute masterclass of a film. I mean, next to maybe that, I'd say maybe Mission Impossible Fallout came close. Even watching it recently, I was absolutely blown away by the craft over there, and what George Miller accomplished with that was beyond remarkable. And I think when it comes to his Mad Max movies, I've enjoyed pretty much all of them. I mean, even beyond Thunderdome, which often gets, some flack as the weakest one, which I do agree it is, there are a lot of things that I do enjoy about it. I actually got to see them at a marathon last year. I got to see all 4 movies on the big screen, which was a lot of fun. And I think that whenever it comes to the Mad Max series, Miller understands that not everyone has to be the same. I think what he does with the first Mad Max movie, and then Road Warrior, Beyond Thunderdome, Mad Max Fury Road, they're all so different from each other, and yet all of them form a narrative of just how insane this wasteland can get. With Fury Road, I feel like he reached a bit of a zenith point with that. It was like, this is as crazy as it gets. And Furiosa follows in those footsteps while also being a completely different movie in a lot of ways. I feel like this is something that needs to be made clear going in, because many of you might expect Fury Road 2.0. That's not what this is. This is first and foremost, this is a character-driven piece. It's more a drama than anything else. And while you get a lot of very visually stunning action and some really crazy stuff, at the end of the day, it really does come down to it being an exploration of Imperator Furiosa as we'll get to know her. And you're seeing the various stages of her life chronicled as a result of that. Alayla Brown plays the younger version of Furiosa for a while in this movie, and I thought she was incredible. This young girl is so fantastic in certain scenes especially, and with very little dialogue. She has some dialogue at the start and a couple of other lines, but beyond that, she doesn't say much more. And a lot of that is brilliantly executed. She's a phenomenal actress and she does a really great job. And you pair that up next to a menacing Chris Hemsworth as Dementus, who is giving maybe the best performance I've ever seen from him in this movie. This guy is in the name. He is demented, and he will do things to make a point that are limitless. So that could mean, burning someone alive or ripping someone apart just to be able to say, hey, how loyal are you? How good are you? And Miller, no stranger to the violence, will show those things. And in that way, this is a pretty brutal movie. You will see people torn apart, eaten apart, burned apart. It's all in here. And that way, this is a very relentless movie to watch. And you spend a lot of time, like I said, with younger Furiosa, and then eventually, her time as she gets to know Immortan Joe, not played by Hugh Keys-Byrne in this movie. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But I like the performance that was given here by, the actor's name is slipping my mind. It'll probably be listed over here. But I thought he did an outstanding job as well. He was really good in the role. But as the older version of Furiosa kicks in, Anya Taylor-Joy is magnificent in this. There is a performance in here that is so visceral. And once again, because it's such a character piece, she gets a lot to work with in that sense. Very limited dialogue, once again. She doesn't have a ton of lines, which sort of mirrors Mad Max's movies, like even those ones. There's not a lot of dialogue to Max beyond a certain point. I mean, in Fury Road, for the majority of the first half of the movie, except for the opening narration, he had maybe 5 to 10 words total, not even sentences. Which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And eventually, as she forms more connections, especially with someone named Praetorian Jack, played by Tom Burke, the connections that she's making and the writing that is there for them is extremely well realized. In that way, what Miller does here is a really great story. But make no mistake, the action sequences that you get are nothing short of remarkable. Obviously, this is something that you've come to expect from Mad Max movies, but particularly with this one, some really great stuff once again. Very akin to Fury Road, but also somewhat akin to stuff like The Road Warrior, and because this is the stuff that happens before things really explode to that level. So we're still, sort of at the initial level of that. It makes it a very interesting watch. I think there are a few more things digitally done here compared to Fury Road. In fact, in Fury Road, a couple of times where it gets digital and you can kind of tell because it's not as practical. And those times, it was sometimes a little distracting. That happens with Furiosa too. There are moments where it's extremely practical and very well executed stuff with, real set pieces. But then there's a few times where there's CGI involved and you can see the difference. That doesn't mean it's bad CGI in any way. It's just a little different. And one thing that's going to come up here, which I want to talk about, is the pacing of this movie. So a lot of people are going to talk about this because it's a longer movie than Fury Road, and also it is a slower movie. Like, this is, again, not a full-blown action movie through and through like Fury Road. It's not a big chase sequence. This one really takes its time when it comes to telling its story. And so there will be a lot of scenes which are much slower, and they definitely take their time with it. I had no issues with it. I was so engrossed in the entire movie and the story that it was telling that I didn't really feel the length at all. In fact, it was coming to the end of the movie that I really felt like, oh wow, that was over. I could have gone on with this one. And that's just my personal take on that, and I mean that in like the best way possible. I really loved what George Miller and everybody involved in this movie was able to pull off. Great score once again from Tom Holkenborg, once again coming back to do it after Fury Road. I think he did a fantastic job here as well. I mean, really, every single thing about this movie worked for me. Which inevitably brings us to the question everyone's gonna ask, how is this compared to Fury Road? Is it a better movie? Is it not? The best way I can say it is that I think, again, it complements it very nicely. I think both of them form a very good narrative, cohesive whole. And when you watch this movie, especially as it's wrapping up, the two connect very nicely. So I think at the end of the day, as a full story, they work really well. Now, whether or not you like this more or not, that's a totally other thing. But whether or not it's better than Fury Road, I can't answer that for sure. I mean, I just think that they both work really nicely. And because this works really well, I think it does exactly what it needs to do. And as a result of that, I really loved Furiosa. It is one of the best movies I've seen this year. And I mean, it has been a really good year overall, I think. And I think with Furiosa, it's gotten even better. I mean, I am so happy with this movie. I think even after all this time, George Miller is phenomenal as a director. And I highly, of course, recommend checking it out this weekend. I'm gonna give Furiosa a 10 out of 10. Fantastic movie. And again, can't get enough of Chris Hemsworth in this. Like, such a good villain. Really in awe of this whole thing. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And I'll see you guys at the movies.